مساء الخير. نرحب بكم في هذه الأمسية التي هي تحية لتشارلز ديكنز الكاتب الإنجليزي تحت عنوان تصوير المدينة، وهي عبارة عن نتائج لكتابات ورسوم كانت مطروحة لنفس الموضوع. معانا المتكلمان فليب أرداغ وإيليا، يقدمهم الأستاذ جيمس ماريوني، وهذا النشاط بالتعاون مع المجلس الثقافي البريطاني. فليتفضلوا. Please.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here today, and we have a very exciting lineup at this award ceremony. And this particular presentation will be in several parts. I will just give you a little bit of a background to why we're here, and then my distinguished colleagues Philip Otter and the artist Ilya will present the awards and talk about the winners of the competition, both in creative writing and in illustration. And we'll then also show some work of the illustrator winners as well after each of the categories have been announced. The United Kingdom is the country of focus in this fair, and I'm, as I said previously, very happy to have my colleagues Philip Otter and the artist Ilya with us today to be part of this distinguished event. To celebrate Dickinson's bicentenary, the British Council launched Sketches by Boz, a global celebration of the significant contribution of the work of Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens began his first attempt at authorship in 1836 under the pseudonym Boz, wandering around London and capturing the essence and character of the city. In short narratives, British Council and the UAE called on all aspiring artists to follow Dickens' lead and depict the distinctive character of their city through media such as text, sketches, and paintings. The competition was launched in February across the city, and entries were received under the categories of creative writing in English and Arabic and illustrations. The winners have been chosen by an expert jury members, Philip Otter and Ilya. I am pleased to announce the winners of this competition, and again, as I said, after each of the categories are announced, I'll ask Philip to speak about the creative writing winners, and then Ilya to speak about the illustration winners. Shall we proceed with the winners? Okay. The creative writing in English, ages 14 to 17 years old, Shandeep Seth. I want to tell the winners they better show up, because we've seen the prizes, and if you don't show up, the judges will take them. Okay. All right. Just for the sake of clarity, Shandeep Seth was the winner of the creative writing in English category, 14 to 17 years old. In the creative writing in English, 18 years old, Dr. Ashwin Pillai.
Many congratulations. Very much enjoyed reading your work. Thank you.
In the creative writing in Arabic, 18-year-old and older, Mona Khalifa. I don't know. This is getting very tempting now.
It is. Well, you and I have prizes.
We
I'm not sure about Ilya there.
Oh. In absentia, we want to thank Mona and Shandeep for being the winners. So another round of applause, even though they're not here. Philip Otter will now discuss his reflections on the winners and the choices. Philip?
Thank you. It was a very interesting opportunity to be able to read pieces written by such a different culture. I think if this competition had been open to people in Britain to write about cities, on the surface it would have been very different. The language used by many of the entrants, both in the younger and older category, was very poetic, was very floral, was extremely descriptive. And this made judging the competition quite difficult, because some of them are very similar in the praise and very, very good at evoking a sense of place, a sense of colour, of smell, and in many instances an adoration and an admiration for the city they were writing about. So through use of language, it wasn't what I might expect were this a British competition. But beyond that, of course, there are similarities. And what really made the winning entries stand out was that personalisation. What the Doctor did in his entry was, in a very, very simple story, in very few words, created a backstory through an observation someone made by looking at some plants that they had tended, so suddenly we knew what this person's job was, how they fitted into the cityscape. And then within that, something developed through the characters. So we had a very personal story, very particular to those people, but within that was universal, within the canvas of a city. So I had a great deal of pleasure in reading all the entries. In the children's category in particular, it was very difficult to choose a winner. And then the adult entries, I think your humanisation of the city, which of course Dickens took us down dark alleys, took us down terrible places and peopled it, so we could see how the people affected their environment and the environment affected the people. And I thought in a few very creative brush strokes, you managed to achieve that for us. So I think if we could just clap all those who took part in the writing category of the competition. Very well done to all of you.
Thank you very much, Philip. Well said. It's also great to be able not just to give out an award, but also to understand exactly what you saw in the writer and to allow all of us to understand his techniques. So congratulations again, Doctor. We will now go to the illustration categories, and I'll just make one slight change up. I'll announce one winner, and then Ilya will discuss the work that we have forthwith. Okay? In the illustration category, 14 to 17 years old, the winner is Khalifa Al-Saidi. Is she here? Khalifa. Excuse me.
Hello. Very well done. I have a couple of words to say about your picture, but I'm hoping we can flash it up. And then, very well done. Okay, there's the image by our young artist. What I wanted to say about why this one won over the others in this category. Forgive me for reading off my cue card, but it's about a week since I was last looking at these. What I felt was that it was immediately an interesting and different technique to the other entries and to other artworks I see generally. I felt it stood out. It was superior because of both the suggestion of texture. What is the technique you've used here? We've got a mic for him.
With coal.
Coal?
Yes.
Wow. Really?
Wow.
Graphic.
Oh, charcoal.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. But I'm not artist. I'm his teacher.
Okay, cool. You're the teacher.
English teacher, not artist teacher, of course.
Shukran.
Okay, so are you putting down the dark and then scoring out the light parts? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's almost like a reverse drawing. You're putting down your texture and then bringing out the element out of that. So it has texture, and I think that also gives it atmosphere. Now, for me, that makes it it's suggestive, evocative of somewhere that's neither ancient nor modern. It kind of has there's modern buildings kind of suggested there, but also the ancient qualities of the place. So I find that combination of ancient and modern makes the depiction timeless. So for me, and it is very much a sketch. It's not it's not a long and laboured painting, illustration, much fine detail. It's a sketch. So sketches of the city is something you catch the moment. So it's got all of those qualities to it, and that's what I liked about it. So very well done. Thanks, Khalifa.
MashaAllah, Khalifa. Shukran Jazir. Our next category, in illustrations 18 and older, the winner is Amal Al-Khaja.
Okay, I'm very pleased to present this to you. It's very, very good. And sorry, Amal is still a student, so I would hope this is the beginning of an illustrious career, and I hope it encourages your interest so that you carry on. I might try and ask you a couple of questions about it if the mics are on. Is it okay to say a couple of things about it?
Yes, please.
Yep.
Can we see
Okay.
a picture?
I think we have the original artwork here, which I'll check with Amal that it's okay to pass that round. But even more crucially, it's also flashing up here behind you. But I'll say a few prepared words about it. But this is part of the secret to its success here. What's going on here? So the single images are the images, but this is how they've been put together. And I'll pass that around in a minute as well. And that's crucial to its position as well. Okay, so this prize wins for Amal Al-Khaja for her depiction of the metro system and its users. Stands out for me because it concentrates on ordinary citizens as commuters through the clean lines and bright colours of their steel and glass environment. So this darker world that Philip speaks of in the original Dickens sketches by Boz, that might be somewhere else. It's not in these particular images. But by putting the commuters in this environment, the commuting environment, it unites the depiction of the city with its people. They are of one quality. I think there's a concentration you'll see there on the clothing, the style. We can probably date these images. You know, in 5 years' time, we'll know that these images are from now. We know from some details probably they're not from 5 years ago. So it catches a time as well as the place. I think crucially for me, this expression of this modern journey is made within that concertina style sketchbook. So it reflects, it's an excellent and resounding choice of format that reflects the content. So what I mean by that is, when you look at it, it becomes the journey, and it also has the format of the train. So it expresses what it's trying to show you just in the way it's arranged. So this makes for something very concise but complete in terms of a statement. And from somebody still at the start of the career, I think that's quite a breakthrough to make. So that's why I think Amal deserves the top prize. Very well done. Shukran.
Could I just say, I'm sure that Charles Dickens would have loved the Underground, and I'm sure he would have written about every aspect of the Underground had it been the fully fledged network in London. I think he would have not only written about the commuters, and I'm sure he would have loved to have written about people late at night travelling home, but also the unseen workers, the people repairing the tracks, the people hiding down there for warmth. And I think it would have been a wonderful world for him. So I think it's very, very interesting that you've chosen to illustrate a city in this way. But as Ilya says, it's a very bright, very clean contrast.
And it's an overground. I mean, our system is underground, and it's the age of it. I mean, this one is a very new one, so of course it's still sparkly and new. But we could not depict our tube like this at all.
So I think it's a very interesting topic to choose.
Yeah.
Coming from New York City, the subway would not, this is not the same subway. Can I ask you, Amal, how long did you work on these sketches?
I spent 2 weeks in the metro. Like, I spent 2 weeks riding the metro, sketching people, taking pictures, listening to their conversations, and partially stalking people. But then I spent another week working on the final drawings. But I did a lot, like a sketch of like just rough sketches, really quick ones.
Did you know? Did you know? Sorry.
Go ahead, no, please.
Did you know from the beginning that you were going to put it together in this way?
Yeah, no. At the beginning, at the 2 weeks I spent, they were sort of like a research phase of how I'm going to do it. I wanted to go there and have a look and see exactly what I'm going to do. And I like the idea of the journey, because the first, if you saw the leaflet, the flyer, it starts with the person going down,
Yeah.
and then someone waiting for the metro, and then the people on the metro, and then their way out, exactly like the journey I had. So I wanted to take that from the people sleeping, if you can see that guy, and what they do. And because the metro here, it doesn't take a really long, like it doesn't have really long journeys, it's really short ones. People barely have any time to do anything else. You don't see them reading something. They're either on their phones because it's really short trip, or they're sleeping. So I wanted to do that, and that's in the end I decided to put those scenes in.
Could I ask? It's very interesting. You said that you spoke to people.
No, I
You
didn't.
You didn't speak.
I heard them talking.
Yeah. So you listened to what? So you were like traditionally like a writer, or you were outside. You were there, but you were separate. You were
Yeah.
listening. And did you find listening to their stories, listening to their conversation, that helped you in your artwork?
Yes, it did. It helps you like know how to capture their feelings, or the way some of them were really bored, and it can show like from the way they're standing, and some of them like a lot of other conversation that I couldn't include. But there were like kids talking to their parents, some teaching them, some. So yeah, it did help a lot.
I'm assuming that Khalifa worked in private, but did people know that you were sketching them in the metro?
Some of them caught me doing
They
that.
caught you. How did you hide it?
I tried to smile. Some people actually smiled back. Some of them would walk away, just get up. So,
Because
Thought
that-
you were a secret agent or
Secret agent.
spy.
I don't know.
Wonderful. Well, congratulations. Shukran. I've just been handed a note that I have to announce another winner that was not in the program. The audience winner with the most likes on Facebook, something I know nothing about, is Ayatollah. And is... And we have...
Philip, it's a creative writing.
All right.
that got most
Okay.
hits on Facebook.
Well, fantastic. Very many congratulations.
About your work, but what you wrote.
And well, what I can ask you is, did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy it? Could you say that into the microphone so people know?
Okay, I really enjoyed writing about Sharjah. That's where I live, and it was really nice seeing the audience liking it.
Getting that response, because of course we all talk, we give writing workshops, we talk about writing and the process and all these things, and we talk about how hard it is and how much you have to put in the hours, but something we sometimes forget to say is the sheer enjoyment, the pleasure of writing something. And Charles Dickens absolutely adored writing, and he loved later on, and we'll probably discuss this, he loved reading from his own works. But I think the passion, it doesn't matter if you don't win, it's wonderful that you do. The pleasure of writing, but in addition to the pleasure of writing, you have the pleasure of knowing that of all the other entries, yours is the one on Facebook that people enjoyed most. So please, please keep writing, and very many congratulations. So if I give you that, take that, shake you by the hand. Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize. That category was on my notes, but the other page. Okay. Thank you. We now like to move into a discussion that frames the entire reason why we're here today. And Chantal asked me to pick something from Charles Dickens that I particularly attracted to, that might open up some of the framework that we've been looking at here. And I immediately went to Charles Dickens' 10th novel, Hard Times. And Hard Times very much takes place in a fictional city, Coketown, which is a industrial revolution city that has been besieged by pollution. And it's run by a Mr. Thomas Gradgrind, And you know that Charles Dickens's names of his characters mean what they sound like. And grand grind in English means that something that is good is ground into dust. All the goodness is taken out of it. And Mr. Grand Grind believes that his children should be raised in an educational system completely devoid of creativity. That the only thing that matters is fact and profit and logic. And of course, his children chafe under this particular type of system. One very important character is Louisa, who was stifled by this particular environment. And I was just telling my colleagues before, there's one particular passage in the book where the father, Mr. Gradgrind, is constantly harping on his daughter to not make wrong choices in life, to have an arranged marriage, to live life in thrift without any fantasy. And she's staring at the fire. And the fire is the imagination. She sees things in the fire that her father has no idea what they are. To him, it's a fire that's burning coal, keeping warmth in the house. But for her, she sees imaginary characters. So even though she's living on this repressive situation, her mind is still free. Well, as Dickens is wont to do, he introduces a conflict. And the conflict is a circus comes to town. And a character by the name of Sissy is adopted by the family, and through circumstances too complicated to go into right now. Because this person lives in the circus, there is no fact in circuses. It is all fantasy. It is all imagination. It is all a life that is completely alien to Louisa. So you can imagine how these two worlds collide. And as a result, the book takes us on a journey of a city, of how a city, or asks the question, can the city or people live without imagination? Is progress and money and profit the only thing that matters in life? And Dickens and critical analysis of his work have always specified that he was very concerned about London in the 19th century turning into a completely industrial environment where people, especially the workers and the citizens, become faceless, become bland, become without their souls. So I guess that's a good jumping off point, if I may have been so bold to put my own preference in here and to allow my colleagues to respond to that, and then to ask the question to citizens from many different cultures, many different cities, and specifically this country, a very young country with brand new sparkling cities. Is this a concern? How do we feel about this? We have writers, artists who have written about or sketched about the new emerging city, and even there we see many different stories happening. To comment on that particular opening remark. So I don't know if my colleagues share my hard times affection, but I'll leave it at that.
It's always very difficult to choose a particular favourite of Charles Dickens because he wrote such a fantastic canon of work, and each book brings so many different ideas to the fore. But I think someone once said that imagination was the luxury of the rich. And of course that, on the surface, makes sense. It's saying if somebody does everything for you, you can sit in your chair and your mind can go wherever you like. If you're working in a blacking factory, as Charles Dickens did as his first job, blacking factory is black, polished print work, and he would stick labels with print on them onto bottles. If you're doing mindless work or you're doing hard work, cleaning chimneys, whatever, the suggestion is you cannot afford the luxury of an imagination. But if you actually scratch the surface of that, you can argue that that's a fallacy, because of course, if your life is a life of drudgery and hardship, the one way you can be free of that is through your mind. You're doing boring, repetitive, exhausting work, but the one thing you can do while you're doing that to make your day more bearable is to think of other things. And I think in a cityscape, in a Dickens book, we're very familiar with that very foggy image of London, of the very narrow streets. But let's think of those alleyways and streets and think, what are on those walls amongst the grime? A poster advertising entertainments. And the richer you were, the better quality the entertainment. You would go to the theatre and see a very fine performance. If you had little money, you might be able to go to what you think of as a variety show, where you have lots of different acts. And there were some very cheap, very poor ones where you might see a dog walk on its hind legs for a moment, then fall over. But it was there were lights, it was a night out. And of course, if you were very, very, very poor indeed, you might see street performers. So your city is offering you ways of escaping from the horrors. And one of the problems Britain, I would say, had, because they always wanted to be ahead of the field and the first to do things, other countries learnt from their mistakes. So we have Coketown, we have this city with all its chimneys belching out the grime. And I lived in London in the early 1980s, and it was still a very, very black city. The buildings were very grimy, and it's only since then, when they discovered a new cleaning process, that suddenly you're seeing how beautiful some of these buildings are. So the legacy goes on. So I find it fascinating the way the people affect the city and the city affects the people, and now we're learning belatedly to try and clean up our act, I think.
Ilya?
I think what Dr. James has said allows me to talk about some of the other images you're seeing flash up here, which come from the people in the over 18 category that I felt were number 2 and number 3. I can't control what's appearing when, so I'll try and catch them as they go past in terms of what I say. But there is no second and third place. These were just both didn't quite combine their content with the format in the same way that the winner did. But there was one by Reem Arad Abdul Wahid, and you will have seen those, the big black bars of the construction, not that one. I'll talk about that one next, unless it, yes, no, God. Okay, excuse my French. Okay, the construction views. Here we go, construction views. Yes, okay, we can start passing these around, I forgot. If I can pass those to these gentlemen, I can start going around. So I think there's three of those. So he is reflecting, what I would say is daring and different perspective on the city, from a high-rise perspective, one still in construction. So it's capturing that spirit of growth in what Reem Arad was calling a city of life. Now, what's ironic, and I'm not, without him here to talk to, I'm not sure whether he's aware of it, is the people are not present. I mean, he's chosen to depict the construction, and I think that is entirely valid, and he does it in the best way possible by going to a very scary height and drawing it from the perspective you have of as a steeplejack, as somebody working up there at that height. But of course, from this height, the people are not present. So it kind of reflects something of the unseen workers making that, but also the unseen people teeming in the city of life below. The life, we can't see it. We just see the ant-like growth, the termite mound of the city kind of coming up. The other one is here. Catch it while you can. It's not so clear on the screen, I'm afraid, and we don't have the original of that to show. You can see it's very, very graphic. It's from somebody who's a graphic designer, I believe. He's about 32, so he's well advanced in his career. It is staying there, so I'll talk about it. This is Adnan Arif, and the title, I think, significantly anonymous in Dubai. So it's a sharp, literally sharp and highly original treatment, raising, I think, a great many questions. And I think that's in the spirit of Dickens entirely by itself. The image incorporates a depiction of the chosen citizens within their city, the ancient tradition merging with the modern architecture. What you might not be able to see there clearly is that coming through the robes and so on, and the suggestion, the graphic suggestion of faces there, is the buildings of the city. It's the sharp angles of the high-rises and the buildings coming through. So it's the upward thrusting ambition and the funding that drives the city ever upward and onward. Whatever that might mean for the anonymous people, or are they the anonymous people. I think the title gives as much as the image, and I found it very arresting for those reasons.
Could I just add, it's very interesting seeing those images from high up, because something Charles Dickens did, a lot of people describe Charles Dickens as the first screenwriter, the first writer of movie scripts, which of course he wasn't really writing for the cinema because it hadn't been invented yet. But he did write in an extraordinary way. I think we're very familiar now with the opening scene of a film where maybe you see a city from above, and then you go in closer and you go in onto a particular building, and then you fade through the window and you're inside and the protagonist is sitting at a table or some such thing. And Dickens did this, and one has to remember when he was writing at the beginning of a number of his chapters, he does an aerial view of cities, and these would be an aerial view that no one had ever seen. There were no skyscrapers under construction for him to be up. There were no helicopters to take him. He does refer occasionally to hot air balloons. I've no idea, you may know, I've no idea whether he went up in a hot air balloon, but a lot of it was done from imagination. He was imagining these cities from above, but such was his imagination that if you were to read one, you would be convinced that he must have had a helicopter tour of Victorian London, and I think that is a remarkable skill.
As far as I'm aware, there was a balloon almost tethered on permanent kind of trips, because there's a well, it's not very famous, there's a painting that you can see if you go to the Museum of Docklands, and I think it's from about 1872, and it's an aerial view, and of course what you see is a lot lower rise, higher rise than any village or town, but it's lower rise than the modern city, but church spires just everywhere, like a field of spikes. You know, as far as you can see, and the docks, of course, the industrial areas. And this amazing, it is it's a painting, but aerial view, and it's just, you know, a helicopter viewpoint you do not expect from as far ago as that. The one thing I found wrong with it was that the museum has tried to set it as a sound and light experience. So they've got the sound of the wind whistling, and then you've got the birds crying, and you've got seagulls crying. We didn't have seagulls in London in 1872. They actually came up the river later than that, which was an obscure fact I found. And I happily wrote it down in the museum book and said, excuse me, we didn't have gulls in 1872. You know. But yeah, there you go.
I guess the question to ask the audience then is, how do you see this city based on some of these reflections, both literary and contemporary, and now hearing from the winners as well about their points of view and the explanations of how some of the artwork has added to that premise. I have two symbolic images of this city, both Abu Dhabi and Dubai. One is on the road from Emirates Road to Dubai, all those developments, Falcon City and a few others. There's always these wooden structures that announce that something is coming. Something is coming, City Arabia or something like that. And there's usually a dinosaur that's leaning over, or some hand that's going there. And I wondered, whoever put these things up, when did they put them up? And then one day, I did see who was putting them up. There was an army of workers climbing the scaffold, trying to put up the sign for the next development in the wind. And each time they put one panel up, it blew away. So there was this, from afar, they did not look like human beings anymore. They looked like insects attempting to honeycomb something to announce to all of us passing by that something was coming. And I returned again recently, coming back the opposite way, and nothing has been built. And now there are big holes, like a big checkerboard, where there was once a sign saying something is happening. So symbolically, it's ambition and hope. Now reality has set in, and sand has a wonderful way of destroying everything. You know, you build on it, and it takes it away. And the other indulgence I'll give you, and then I'll open it up to everyone here, is that in Abu Dhabi, especially in Abu Dhabi, on Electra Street, there was one building near the Royal Meridian. And they attempted to break this building down, and they could not tear this building down. And I was told, why is this structure still half destroyed, and there was this slope of bricks coming down. And they said back in the 60s they made buildings differently. And it was iron cast, steel reinforced beams that they could not break down with modern day machinery. They had to blow the building up and then go back and take it back apart brick by brick. So ironically, even with sand, there's some buildings that have challenged people to tear them down. And every time I passed by this building, I said, good for you. Good for you. You can't get torn down. They just can't get rid of you. They're still trying today, and there might be a little bit left of it. So those are my two reflections of a city. But I'll keep quiet and open it up to our audience here, to their reflections about the city, and positive and negative or neutral at all. We have a microphone, I think, circulating around. Chandeep has come. Chandeep, we're not going to take your award from you because we can give you now the award. Okay. Yes, hold on one second. Chandeep, you're now going to receive the award for creative writing, the 14 to 17-year-old category. Chandeep, set.
Very many congratulations. Thank you. As I was asking one of the other winners, did you enjoy?
Oh yeah.
Did you enjoy doing it?
Definitely. I think it's one of the first competitions I've had where I've been asked to, talk about Dubai from this perspective. Just look at a scene and, describe that scene. And when I was writing it, I said that, Dubai is a city that's always so lively. It's always got this life about it, whether you're seeing it in the daytime or whether you're seeing it in the nighttime. In fact, in the nighttime, it's even more. And when I was writing it, I said that, I need to capture that spirit. I need to make it like as if it's like a human being amongst us. And that's basically what I did. And I think that's basically what made the audience like it.
Well, I think when I was writing my notes, because obviously I read all the entries I was given, and I would just write a few notes in the margin about it. And I think I actually wrote that you made the city a character. Yeah. And hearing you say that, it had life, it had breath, it had a personality. And I think that really comes through. So I'm delighted you enjoyed writing it. I was very impressed by it. And I hope you carry on writing, and please accept this,
Thank you.
this
Thank
prize.
You so much.
Thank you very much
Thank
indeed. So I'll take the microphone back off. Thank you.
We're happy for Chandeep, but we're sad we might lose another. We can't go away with one of his awards now.
The high wire act has now begun.
Yes, the microphone is coming toward you.
Hi, I've only been living in Abu Dhabi for a year, and what I've noticed is that the city, it's really hard to walk around the city. One of the things is, no, it's not just the traffic, there's no shade or very little shade, and very few buildings have arcades like you would have in Italy or something, where you would have a shaded bit that you can hang out and watch the street, people in the street life go by. There needs to be, there are brilliant areas like the Corniche, but downtown in the center part, there's nothing that you can actually just walk, like hide from the wind, because actually Abu Dhabi is quite windy with all these high buildings now, or just watch people go by. And you'll find them in mosques and places that I can't linger because I'm not, it's not right. But nowhere else. And it would be really nice if we could have that. And the other thing is, they don't like people walking because they put things like bollards in the middle of the pavement and big curbs, and they have big, they have manholes that are 6 inches above the rest of the floor of the pavement, and it's just, it's a nightmare for anyone who's not visually and very able and can walk well. And even when I took my mum to Masdar to show her that what the architects are doing now to make a more sustainable, livable city. And my mum's 84 years of age, And in Masdar, right in the middle of this really narrow pathway, they had a drainage channel that I was really worried that my mum was going to trip and break her ankle the day before the flight. So this is the sort of thing we have to remember, that people like to walk and they like to be social. And I think Abu Dhabi needs to get there, and it hasn't quite. And there might, other people can tell me about, because I'm new, there might be places I haven't found. So I'm very happy.
Well, thank you. The purpose of the discussion is to open it up, and those who, yes, now you've engendered discussion, yes.
My concern in what was going on, I think the generation of UAE here, we have seen what I think very rare people have seen in the world. We have seen a dramatic change where the population were very few, and construction was also very few, and we have jumped, I think, and gone in much more stressful world than even New York, because we have to keep up the quality of the village, visit my mom, auntie, sister, brother, maybe visit 50 or 100 relatives per week, but still work in a very highly competitive organizations. That was a very challenging for us, especially who are working in real organization. What I mean. My concern was how not to lose the qualities of the desert man, because there is a very high quality here. People, they are very, very clever, very, very unique in the way they pick things, and very healthy also. But normally people, when they change, the society changes, they don't know what to lose, what they are losing at what they are gaining, and they don't build a new organization to keep up what they are losing. I'll give an example. For example, people in the past, farmers or even in the factories, they are fit because they are physically working. They are putting physical effort, so they are fit, healthy. When the time changed and they became rich, they became fat and sick. So when they were poor, they were fit and healthy. When they are rich, they are fat and sick. How to avoid that? Then the idea of clubs, physiotherapy and physical exercises came up. Can we develop mechanism of maintaining the golden quality that we had here and still enjoy the civilization? This is one issue. For me, I used to work in a company, in Etisalat. At one time, I saw the maps of Dubai. There was no space, empty space on the maps. Projects, they were everywhere. For me, it is a nightmare. Because I travel to Pakistan and come, my colleague cannot, he takes longer time. I reach my office in Pakistan, he still did not reach his office from Sharjah to Dubai. That was a nightmare. For me, it was a blessing. The crisis, economical crisis, I think it is a blessing because it slowed down that. So these are some of the...
Could I just, before we go on to the next
Please,
person,
yeah, please,
just
Philip, yes.
comment about speed of change. Obviously, in Britain, in the UK, when the Industrial Revolution came along, prior to that, most people worked on the land. That's what there was. And there were a few cities, the main one obviously being London, but people worked the land. And in an incredibly short space of time, I don't have the statistics, but we went from the majority of people living in an urban environment and all the problems that followed on from that, no sewage systems, no nothing. And I think a very similar way, the technology overtook the one important thing that it should have been serving, that was the needs of the people. And I think these things do go in cycles. The lady here was saying about the fact that you almost let the environment win. The first part of your point was there aren't shady areas, there aren't arcades, you can't walk outside. And my first reaction was, because I'm not familiar with your city, was thinking, well, obviously it gets very hot. But then you can say, but there are ways around this, and there are places where people can meet. But it almost sounds like if you can live in these wonderful air-conditioned interiors. Now that air conditioning exists in the way it didn't before, and you've got these beautiful, beautiful marble floors and everything, people are forgetting, because they've got this cocooned world, that they don't necessarily have to. And again, that's paralleled in Dickens, because the very wealthy people would live in the beautiful houses on the outskirts of the town, away from the factories and the chimneys and all the grime, and within their own enclosed environment, needn't sully themselves with what was going on. Talking about dips and things in pavements is something I can't think of a direct parallel, but I think if everyone's driving around or indoors, maybe they're not thinking about the minutiae, which does make a big difference, obviously. On a personal
Just so that you know that you're not alone, Dickens talked about that as well, that in the novel, those who are rich, the grand grinds, enjoy a better so-called quality of life, and yet they're miserable. And their health is sickly, whereas the workers are oppressed, but they're a little happier because they are not consumed by greed and avarice. And the circus performers certainly are poorer, but they're healthier because they enjoy life. They're in the circus. And for them, getting neurotic about money and where you're going to live and all that is not their concern. So I think he was making the same observation. How was it when we were poor, we were healthier, when we became richer, we became sicker? And one statistic that I was told when I first came here 7 years ago, that in the 1960s, the UN did a survey of all the world countries. The UAE was ranked the poorest country in the world. In 40 years, it is now in the top 8 richest countries in the world. And it said that no country in the world, in the history of humankind, has leapt that forward in that short a period of time.
Yeah, I mean, the Industrial Revolution fell fast for us, as the commentators like Dickens at the time has recorded. It's now so much faster. If you look at China in the last few years, you know, it's like all those bicycles that used to ride around the streets, now they're in cars. And that's within a decade that entire shift has come. So there, you know, that level of revolution is sped up and sped up and sped up. If we're fearing a loss of the desert, I think in the end the desert will win.
Another comment? Yes.
Gentleman.
Yes.
As my observation here, the desert develops the quality of leadership, the basics quality of leadership. It can be, I can find it in many people in the desert, in the Bedouins. When I, as an employee in Etisalat, when we look at the chart of the qualities of leadership, I find it a lot. It's common, but I don't find that much common leadership quality in the people of the city. They are maybe more educated, they have more information, but creative thinking less, leadership quality is less.
Can I say something there? Oh yeah, go ahead.
One more comment.
Okay, if we we focus on Dickens, it mentioned in Dickens' phrases that a child told his father, "Okay, Dad, what's after money?" And you know that in our cities today, or cities in the UAE, we have very beautiful buildings, very well-planned streets, but lifeless building, and people have lack of communication, and you have some horror. People, a lot of people work like machines, lack of humanitarianism between people, emotions, and like this. You have always some fear and horror inside that the building, as the lady said, there is no balconies. For example, in Egypt, we used to have balcony. We talk to each other from balconies. We said good morning. We talk to all types of people, males, females, everything. But here is very limited in many things. Everything is limited and canned and machinery. That's it.
Ilya wanted to make a comment?
Sorry.
Okay. Good.
You want to react?
Doctor, go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
because I'm veering the discussion off to another direction. You want to close this? Okay.
We're yours, you know.
Okay, I'm an architect, and first of all, I must congratulate you for this wonderful competition, because we, as a family of four, we took it up, on the dining table, and we worked on it for 3-4 days, and it was a lot of discussion, what to put on paper. I did an illustration also, and Chandeep also did an illustration. I'll just bring to the quality, and then maybe a lot of people can support me. I'm going to the literary side. I'm not discussing the city or Abu Dhabi or Dubai out here, because we saw during the discussion so much we otherwise would criticize. When you put pen to paper, then one has to get a little more objective about things. And then when you transform those ideas to actual words and phrases and sentences and how they read, and then you write and read, and then again what impact it has, and does it match with your idea. So that exercise was really wonderful. And I would say that something like this, taking a cue from Dickens, was really marvelous. Because here we had some examples of how Dickens had wrote, but of course it was not possible to kind of go in his frame of thought. But because our vocabulary is totally different, our experiences are totally different, the way we look at things is totally different. And all those, let's say, even a single multi-layered society where you have, ranging from the elite to let's say the workers, industrial workers. Here we have, the disparity, for example. Now, understanding the disparity and putting into words was again really, really challenging. Because here, so what I would say is keep it up. I think a forum like this, not just as one single competition, but also something like which is, and the 250 words was a wonderful idea. That's again something, because just putting those ideas into 250 words was amazing.
I think sometimes if you set a competition and it's a short story competition and someone says how many words and you say up to 5,000, that's a type of competition, and you may at the end of it be able to produce an anthology which contains stories of roughly the length you'd expect a short story to be. But I think the challenge of 250 words is actually a far, far greater one. I think it really forces you to concentrate the mind. And you can either make it a simple conceit. Those 250 words could be dialogue, a conversation with two people on the street in a city, and somehow through their conversation it evokes their environment. And that would be very different, because you couldn't fit a great deal of detail in there. You would create a feeling. Or in those 250 words, you could choose them very carefully and create a character of the city or an aspect of it. So it's a very good way of forcing you at your dining room table, forcing you to really, as you say, focus your thoughts. And that's why it was a pleasure to read all of them, not just because they were short, so that made my job easier, because I have a beard to maintain, I have a hard life, but it really was an opportunity to see what people were thinking, what they were trying to say about their particular city. And of course this is, as was said in the introduction, this is a part of a British Council's project that they're doing all over different parts of the world, and there's some fantastic photographs which are sketching the city, which you can look at, showing alleyways and various other things. And different countries are involved in different projects, and I'm sure that there will be other competitions about other aspects, about other things over time, because it's wonderful for me. People say, why do you want to come to Dubai or Abu Dhabi? I beg your pardon, I went to Dubai last year, Abu Dhabi, and talk about books. And it's an opportunity to meet people and find out how completely different you are and how exactly the same you are. And that's wonderful for me as a writer to have a chance to meet and talk to people.
I think it's also...
It was a pleasure, actually. Sorry, it was a pleasure to read all those pieces.
Yeah.
That was, and wherever I was, and the wonderful platform of the social media, putting it on social media, I think that was an amazing thought. Because you were able to share it with, I think, close to 150 people very easily. And I mean, one person alone, I could do that. So imagine the kind of spread the whole thing must have had.
Well,
I think that before we bring it back maybe to the city again, which is a very good comment, we may want to step back and realize why we're sitting here. You know, here we are in this gigantic room, and we're talking about kitab. We're talking about books and art, and these are priceless. These ideas cannot have a time limit on them. There's not an expiry date on these things. And you look around you, and everywhere is books and knowledge and art and creativity. And cities do enforce that or negate it. But at the same time, it always survives. And we gave out awards to people who are involved in wanting to be creative and keep that alive. So actually, well, we might have a larger thing going on over here, which is that no matter the positive or negative effects of cities, and I come from New York City, which has positive and negative things every 24 hours, we're still here to celebrate the idea that we can all think and use our imaginations, and that we reward individuals who help us see life in a different way. I saw the way you see the city. I would not have known that years ago. I saw the way you, in your mind, you gave me a gift. I didn't know how you think. You didn't say, Jim, here's how I think. You drew a picture, all right? You wrote a story and hope to read it, inshallah, and then I'll know how you think. Buildings don't say that all the time. You know, cities don't always make us know that, but these gatherings allow us to get inside other people's skins in a way that are very different than anything else that I know of, and we make our lives about. So,
can I comment
please, yeah.
on I was trying to come back to the point you made about the structure of the city and its purpose. It's very much an outsider's viewpoint. It might be an ignorant viewpoint. I've only been to Dubai twice, and I've only come through Abu Dhabi and then been here basically inside this complex for about a week. But we have done little cultural tours and things, and my perspective on Dubai, and forgive me for anybody who is from Dubai and a Dubai supporter, but there's a lot of stunt architecture there, and I'm told that the life expectancy of those fabulous buildings is about 7 to 8 years, and then in the way that people who go to bars are bored with the decor and stuff, they want to go to a different bar because they know this decor. So those buildings are built with a short life expectancy. And when I was at Emirates Palace here, they have an exhibition showing the architecture they're building, which will be for cultural centres, for museums and art collections. So these have a purpose. They are stunt architecture, but it's hopefully reflective also of the content and the imagination and the drive, because what they will contain will not be for commerce or not be for banks or for shopping malls. They'll be there to contain ideas and collections of artwork. So I think they have a deeper purpose. Now, one thing that is unspoken in the entries we've had here is that no reflection on Khalifa's win. There was only 4 entrants in his age category for drawing the city. There was many, many more for the over 18s, but I have to assume from that the under 18s are not encouraged enough to use their imaginations, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong in that assumption. Certainly we didn't get the entries, and I don't know why that is. And I think in one of the categories for the writing there was no entries at all in the lower age group.
Yeah.
So something's going on there in terms of not necessarily at home, but you know, maybe the values of the world that's being encouraged is for commerce.
That word fun, you heard me ask
Profit,
the children about fun. This morning I was co-presenting, well, I was one of the children as involved as we were, but with Priscilla, who's a reading expert, who's in the audience here today, who's also come over from England. We were talking to children about reading and saying, what do you like about reading? And they're saying you can get information from it. You can do that. It's very difficult to get any of them to say, I read for pleasure. You have a very, very high literacy rate here. Children can read much better, much younger age, much better than they can back in the UK. But it doesn't seem that necessarily then extends to picking up a book and enjoying it for pleasure. Once we got the session underway and we were talking about what would be a good title for a book that would make you want to read it, suddenly we were getting ideas and excitement, and the whole idea was coming to life. But I just didn't get that feeling that there was that love of reading. And my fear about these art galleries, the Guggenheim that you're going to have built here, fantastic looking building. You've got the Louvre, it looks amazing. If it looks anything like the models, you are going to have these fantastic buildings. But you have to have the works of art to fill it. And
It's their purpose.
I'm wondering what these works of art will be. And I want to come back. I want to come back here many times. And I want to come back and have a look and see that and see who it's attracting, see what the buildings are around it. Are we going to have rows of empty houses that no one can afford? Are we going to have an opportunity? It's going to be built with shaded areas where once you've seen the art, you can sit outside and discuss it, and galleries and stand and look out. So you're not cocooned when you're in the Louvre. It's not just the Louvre. You're aware that it's a part of something else. As an outsider, it's absolutely fascinating.
Sir?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment actually about the city, related to the city, and it's the mobile phone. I think here in the UAE, and not just the UAE, I'd say in many Arab countries, reading is not encouraged. It's not encouraged because of the nature of the stories that we had here, that is oral literature. So we haven't. Well, there isn't a tradition of reading, basically. Plus, technology like this and the laptops and computers, which obviously have some positive. They have positives, but they haven't helped actually in reading with reading, so that the youngsters and so on read more.
Could you not turn that on its head? Could you not say, because I'm a great believer in the message rather than the medium, and back in the UK we have a big dispute about does it matter if we don't have books made out of paper anymore, and I can have personal reasons why I physically like to put my book on the shelf, and the history of the book, I can go back, open it, there's a coffee stain, and I go, I remember when I read that, or there's a bus ticket. And there are all these things that if a 50-year-old man can explain why he likes that, but ultimately it's the written word. And if someone wishes to hear it as an audio book that they've downloaded from a website and they can listen to it on their phone because they'd rather hear it spoken through headphones, if they want it to have more of an interactive element, could we not use the technology to give an appeal to the book in this new form to a younger generation that they might not have, particularly if there isn't the tradition of the paper book? Might not that be a way of...
I can see the point, but as a university lecturer, I can see lots of problems with, for example, spelling. Because of this, I think, the messaging, all the shortcuts they use and so on. He has lots of problems. Students have problems writing, and obviously we are in an age of writing rather than just speaking. Which I'm not against, of course. I myself enjoy listening, for example, to stories, but the fact that we don't read, I mean. From a book or even from an iPad or whatever, but reading rather than listening only. I think a lot of students, for example, find listening as a way to avoid reading, not because it helps. It helps, I'm not saying it doesn't help, but it's basically avoiding reading. Well, the question that probably follows from this, what do you think about ways that would encourage the younger generation here, for example, to read more?
I think trying to collect all the thoughts that have been going around here, I'm perhaps to answer that question, I would propose a test for all of us now. Let's jump ahead to this city 75 years from now, okay, in the year 2087, okay? It is now 2087. there has been a catastrophe. We have to decide which, my colleagues are all dead, including me. We have to decide which 3 buildings we want to preserve, or what one building we want to preserve. And we have some very draconian choices. Our choices are a shopping mall, a cellular phone outlet, and a library. Which one do we choose? We only get to choose one. The mall, the cellular phone, or whatever it's called in 2087, and a library.
Depends where the food is.
Well, we have to think, because we're thinking of structures. What would be the most sustaining place that we'd have, okay? And we have to do this. We've been appointed to say that this is the building that will best represent our city, our progress, and the nature of who we are. Okay, I open the floor to all of you. In the year 2087, what do we do? And
watch out for the zombies as well.
And one small proviso, précis, is that in my university, they built the university underground. There's no building you can go around campus and say, oh, there's a library. It's underground. It's in some other building. And they close at 4:30. Why? Shuwada, I don't know why. Big mushkila. But what building will we preserve? What do you, Khalifa, which building would you choose? And remember, it has your artwork in it. Which one do you want to have it in? A shopping mall, a cellular phone outlet, or a library? We put you on the spot.
Yeah, that's a bit cruel.
Library.
Library,
What do you think you'll be in 2087?
You'll be 77.
What will you have done with your life? Sorry.
That's very cruel.
That's right. But thank you for the library.
I
No.
just wanted to ask you what your interests, what you want to do in your job when you're
What?
older. You know?
Would you like to be an artist?
Okay, sorry.
No.
It's okay, Khalifa.
Could I ask, does the shopping mall have a very good bookshop in?
Well, they used to in New York, but they tore them all down. They all got defranchised. Actually, there was a quote in a Barnes and Noble back in New York, near New York University, and they had it painted on the wall, and it said, I believe it was attributed to Tolstoy, and he said, "When I get money, I buy bread. If I get more money, I don't buy bread, I buy books."
Yeah.
So I rather read than eat. And it reminds me of Gauguin. You have to leave the artist out of this whole thing. But, no, not Gauguin. They'll come back to me. He died penniless. He was a contemporary of Van Gogh. And in order to keep painting, even though he was dying, he ran out of paint, so he used his own blood to paint. And these stories are legion, you know, that what drives a person to die in a garret for the sake of art, right? Now, Van Gogh, as you know, died penniless. He never sold a painting in his life. If it wasn't for his brother, we would not know who he is. And we have countless examples of that. Shakespeare retires to Stratford-upon-Avon. The only reason we have his plays is because his friends said, you know, Will, these are really great things, and maybe we should preserve this. And you go, oh, I don't know, maybe it was okay. But they lived a life of art. They lived to make it part of their existence. And basically, the reason why I asked that question is because, again, we're all talking about the life of the city, the life of art, the life of literature. But where do these things go? What do we want to do to promote these things later on? So, library is a good choice, but that might be the romantic choice. What do you think might happen?
But just to bring it full circle, Dickens was obviously concerned, just to reiterate, his great concern was people. about the well-being of people, the treatment of people. And of course, that should be the function of a city. It should be there to care about its people. It should serve the people, and the people should serve the city. And when that balance goes wrong, as it did in Victorian England, because the lower echelons of society were looking after the rich, and the imbalance, there was no plan. It was higgledy-piggledy. It was built over time. And the thing about culture, people realize they've lost their heritage. When it's all knocked down and you've built something big in its place, it's only later on that you realize that it's gone. Very differently in London, they'd have no respect for the medieval buildings. They'd knock one down if they needed to. In World War II, there were bomb craters. Much of London was bombed, and there are some of us in the audience who weren't necessarily alive in World War II, but can well remember the craters, because they were there up until the late 1970s and the early 80s. So you've got all this higgledy-piggledy all thrown together, all these different ages, and it's only then when you clear the slums and destroy them and build something with the best intention in the world that you realize you've obliterated a culture. But Dickens ultimately, although he was writing about cities, fog, the River Thames, little alleyways, depravity, it was all came down to the people who were living them, which is why making the city itself a character was such an interesting thing, because they're a player in a bigger part. And that's why I think it's been very interesting, some of the comments from the floor.
Yes, please. Do you have your microphone?
You have a
Thank you. Hello. I've been here since 1983 and
It's on, but you need to speak closer.
in Dubai, and seen it grown from what I considered a village into a city. And what interested me when I first came was the culture, the older side, the desert. That's what I love. And obviously it's changed very rapidly over the period of time that I've been here. And one of the things that I think happens when something does change extremely rapidly, that there is this, as you were saying, Philip, the culture side of it gets lost. And is there a worry that the culture will become a bit like the animals in a zoo, that it will be kept for special occasions, it won't actually survive in itself, and the current generation will see what has grown up as a city as the culture of the country rather than the tradition of the country, and sort of not that it becomes homogenized and it doesn't actually hold the actual Arab culture, which should be preserved in some way. Yeah.
Just to have a plug here, and a warning, and maybe a hope, that in 1966, when I was a high school student, the New York City, which prides itself on being sophisticated, committed the greatest atrocity to culture, art, and literature by destroying what was then Pennsylvania Station. It was an ancient building, a Beaux Arts building, ancient in the sense of good, but a wonderful example of Beaux Arts architecture, because they thought it was a boondoggle, it was a swindle anyhow, it was a real estate gambit, and they destroyed this building. And the tragedy was that the art was completely lost. It was all the great pillars and monuments and stone eagles were all pulverized and destroyed. And it was so outrageous, and people were trying to stop it. But the powers that be who wanted to make money off of this, because to them it was just land that had to be done, redone. And they built a Madison Square Garden for basketball games, and I'm not I stopped watching basketball at that time. And a terrible replication of a train station called Pennsylvania Station, which, if anyone's been to New York, has all the charm of a bathroom, okay? It gave rise to the New York City Preservation Council, and that only was in the 1960s. John F. Kennedy's wife, Jackie Onassis Kennedy, became the leader, and now there's a law enshrined in New York: you cannot tear a building down that has historical significance. You cannot touch it. England has had this for a long time. My neighbor in England could not change the windows of his house because it's dated from the Victorian era. We might find these quaint curiosities, but going back to New York for a second, I implore you, any leaders from the city council here, stop now. Whatever's left of Abu Dhabi or Dubai from the long time ago, build a fence around it, sit on it, save it, whatever it is. You can know when you drive from Al Ain to Abu Dhabi, what's left of old Abu Dhabi, what's left of old Dubai, old Sharjah, what? But imagine New York City tore that down, this magnificent building that is no longer exists except in pictures. I'd hate to think that whatever we can preserve will only remain in some dusty old photograph. So.
Could I very quickly bring it back to a comment which ties in with that, about getting children to read and how we enthuse children. Today we were given a bag of books that are available in Abu Dhabi to pick out, to hold up to children to talk about the covers. And one of the books we pulled out was a desert book. That lady's actually holding it behind us there, so if you look towards her, it has a picture of a boy on a camel in a desert. And I assumed that there must be many picture books about the desert because we're in Abu Dhabi. And then I was speaking to someone who's very familiar with children's literature over here and picture books and things, and she said there are remarkably few books beyond traditional tales, but there are remarkably few books about the desert, and I am assuming as an outsider that the desert is a very important thing that appears in lots of books and things. But now I'm, from that conversation, wondering whether it's sort of brushed aside slightly, because everyone is talking about living in these air-conditioned things and making room and knocking things down and moving on. It is the desert. I mean, that's why it was so, this gentleman here, I loved your passion from the outset about what you were talking about and what was important, what you felt was being lost, and the fact that you even said that maybe the economic downturn in some ways was a good thing, because maybe it is an opportunity for people to stop and think about what they might be able to preserve, because once it's gone, you ain't going to get it back.
That I discovered when I was in Sharjah Book Fair last year. So the Sultan of Sharjah, every family in that emirate was gifted with a coffee table, and the coffee table was filled with 50 books. Now, this is not only the people in the city, but also in the outlying hills and so on and everywhere. You know, an extremely magnanimous gift, but a very practical and smart one, because the masterstroke was that the books in the table were not the same between neighbour to neighbour to neighbour. So what I think the hope there is, and obviously the books were from a range of picture books for small children, to manga for teenage readers, to books, photo books, cultural books. 50 books, you can get quite a range in there for all types of people. But the titles were not the same between the gifts that were given to neighbouring houses. So hopefully, if they liked a book, they talk to the neighbour about the book and exchange the books as well. So a kind of a seeding there of, okay, we've got 85% literacy, which we can only dream of in the UK, and in America I imagine it's even worse. So it's you know, there's a great gift there for reading, and hopefully that'll work, and also the people will talk about it between themselves more. Knowledge Without Borders, it's called.
I would just like to go back on Mr. Phillips' comment about the city and the people. Now, UAE is a very welcoming country, and the Dubai, Abu Dhabi, whatever you look at, you see wonderful structures, wonderful pieces of architecture. But behind every piece of marble, every building, there are a lot of people involved. And in my line of work, I come across people. And so this is what we shouldn't forget, right from the envisioning leaders and down to the laborers who built those wonderful structures. And I think we should never forget about these people who are really involved, and the city that you live in is made up of the people. So the spirit of the city comes from the people that live in it. And I guess that's what this whole forum is about, and that's what Charles Dickens probably tried to portray in his work.
Absolutely, and that's why you won the category, because you captured that so in 250 words so beautifully. So thank you for that.
And hopefully, if there were photographers if there are photographers in the audience, and we combine all the themes that have been talked about here, literature and the city and losing the past, someone might be inspired to take photographs of the workers on those building structures much the same way that the famous photographers took pictures of the Depression era workers in America, in New York City, building the Empire State Building, where they're all lined up on the beam. Because these are the unknown people that built the subways and the Empire State Building, all the great buildings of that period of time. And just so that I'm proud that my memory hasn't failed me, Modigliani sold his blood. Khalifa and Amal, I hope you never have to sell your blood to do art. But
if you have to, do it.
You have to. I will give you my blood to paint, okay? Because you gave us your gifts today in this period of time. And hopefully your art will always be in museums, and that, Doctor, your literature will always be able to be bought, so that we don't have to talk about this only in absentia or as a one-off thing, that we remember you from years from now. Because Dickens was alive and he's in movement, and your art and your literature is in movement, okay? It doesn't stay in the past. It keeps on going. We inherited, all of us, we're sitting here, our lives are a product because somebody decided, I want a life in the arts, okay? I want a life in painting, I want a life in writing, I want a life in ideas, and you gave us these things. And because you did, we are all richer for it, okay? So that brings us to the close of our session, the magic hour of 4 o'clock. People are pointing to their watches, and I'm trying to be a good 3:59 and 30 seconds. I want to thank our guests today for a wonderful session. I want to thank most of you, the winners, for sharing your work with us and being duly rewarded, even though we don't get to take home some of those prizes that we really wanted, we coveted. And I want to thank my distinguished colleagues for a wonderful afternoon session. Shukran Jazir and mashallah.
Thank you. Can I just cheaply plug my book? I've only got postcards here, but I'd love you, if you're interested, to take one away. It's a tale of the people in a city at a time when it's a crucible of change. So I think it has relevance to some of the things we've been talking about today. If you want one, please take a postcard.
Could I just say I felt it cheapened the entire
I know, but this is what we have to do these days. If you